out of school for a year, and beforehand I had played football for 9 years. I was in a defensive position, so a lot of headbanging and smashing and all that sort of thing. And while I was in school, if I wasn't intensely interested in what I was doing, then I gave it no attention at all. So there was times where like I would be reading in class and people would throw balls at my head and I wouldn't notice until somebody took the book away, which happened often. And in my final year of high school, I stopped caring about school in October in an English class. So I finished English literature with a grand percentage of 55% because I'd only finished half the assignments given. I then went on to do the provincial in 45 minutes and got 91%. And my English teacher felt like shooting me for good reason. And that kind of sums up my entire high school existence. Very head in the clouds, thinking about other things. I wrote a lot of poetry, did a lot of like drawings and whatnot, but no actual schoolwork.
It's hard for you to focus?
Yeah, focus was everywhere. It was rather it was terrible. It got to the point where I would forget what I was doing halfway to doing it, like crossing through rooms even. It was, you could liken it to there being 1,000 TV screens all on different channels all at once. And so we tried pills for a little while. And when I remembered to take my pills, it helped a little bit in the sense that it threw a big blanket over all the TV screens. But I didn't like that because it stifled all of my creative abilities. And that felt worse than not being able to concentrate. So took the pills off, or forgot to take the pills for a sufficient length of time. And my mom heard about this through somebody. I'm honestly not too sure. And the first series of sessions back in February of this year, this year, went exceedingly well and beyond expectations. And they brought me down to the level where everybody else that comes in here is at when they first start. So did the first round, 10 sessions, and a remarkable improvement was noticed. And so it was recommended that I go again for another 10 sessions. And my boss at the time, he hired me due to my good work ethic, and I was able to move rocks that he couldn't, which he loved. But he was constantly putting me back on task, like because I'd stop working because I'd start thinking, or I'd start talking, or just kind of zone out. And so he'd constantly turn around, Brock, get back to work. Brock, what are you doing? That sort of thing. And he noticed some improvement after the first round. And so when I went for the second round, he gave me the time off. And when I came back, he was ecstatic with the change that came over. Didn't have to be reminded to get back on task. I worked faster, worked harder. I could stay on task with great ease and problem solve better.
Your memory was really a lot better too.
Yeah, I could actually remember things that I did yesterday and what I was going to do before I crossed the room. And
he's ever since he was probably 3 years old, that as a parent, you hate to say this, but you start noticing things that just don't seem normal in the relativity of children.
I've never been normal.
And he, anything change or different, he would sort of really set him off. He, little kid, go brush your teeth for bedtime. He'd come out of the bathroom 20 minutes later and he'd say, oh, you brushed your teeth? And he'd go, oh, that's what I was supposed to do. And he'd go back, and his memory and ability to focus wasn't there. So we had a lot of things tested. We had him tested for Asperger's, and we had him tested for FAS, and we've had him tested for all sorts of things, because he really, all the way through school, he was this intelligent, brilliant person and got really good marks when he actually did something, but his communication skills and his social skills were sort of way over here. So he had this huge gap between his executive functioning and in other areas. And so when I heard about the Valentus Clinics, I was sold before, and the brainwave optimization before I'd even got here and had them. And I came by myself and interviewed with Dr. Simpson and sort of said, you know, would this help my son? And she suggested that it probably would, and he would see a difference. And he was always an avid reader, and I think that was a big coping mechanism for him. So he would read and have a plethora of knowledge in his mind. And in conversation, it was always about sort of how fast the space shuttle does.
Random facts.
Yeah.
Like I fell out of my friend's bunk bed once and hit my head, and the entire way to the hospital I was sprouting off random facts about Hitler or World War II specs on various things and whatnot.
And
a good example of like when I was little, by the age of 5 or 6, I had memorized and could properly pronounce the Latin names of all my favorite dinosaurs, but couldn't remember to brush my teeth.
Yeah, he was just really, and you'd be in conversation about a specific subject, and then Brock would pipe in with something that had nothing to do with what you were discussing.
No segueing conversations.
And so we had the brain training done, and after the first set of 10 sessions that he had, we were up hiking on the mountain with our dog, and he actually came with me, which was awesome, and we had conversation all the way up and talked and back and forth and stuff. And I got off the mountain after about an hour and a half, and all of a sudden I kind of stopped and I looked at him and I said, do you realize what just happened? And he goes, we went for a walk, you know, like, you know, typical kid, that his mom. And I said, and I just welled up with tears. I said, we actually had a back and forth conversation about relevant information that was pertinent to what's going on in your life now for the first time. So anyways, I was very emotional, and because it took 19 years to get there. So it's been it's been huge for our life in that sense. And he can sort of plan things a lot more now that he never used to be able to. He would, you know, simple things that most people take for granted, he used to have to work at. And now he can get up and go, oh yeah, I got to be at work for whatever time, and you know, I got to make my lunch or whatever. And he just sort of does it more automatic now, whereas before he'd have to write notes and put Post-its all over the house to remind him and set reminders in his cell phone. So
It's a huge amount of work, and that, because for the most part, I forget to do half the things anyway, would just frustrate me to the point where I would refuse to do them, and then that would set
frustrate
Mom off, and then that would set me off, and then
so
downward spiral.
Yeah, and so for a kid's self-esteem growing up, that's a real hard thing for them, because as a parent, you're constantly trying to support them, but at the same time, it's frustrating. It really is, because you're trying to, you know, teach them and have them self-sufficient and responsible, and yet at the same time, where he was at, he wasn't able to do a lot of it just because of what was going on in his mind. And it's just been great, because I feel like I actually have a son. Not that I never did before, but I have one that I can actually talk to and have communication with, and feel like I'm part of his life now in a whole different manner than what I had before. So it was pretty cool. Valentus Clinics has been, in my opinion, kind of a lifesaver in the sense of having a relationship with your child and bringing that sort of to a flourishing relationship. So I have great things to say about Valentus Clinics, and I recommend it to anybody, whether it's a major brain injury or just prolonged stress. Our bodies react, and I think everybody can benefit from it hugely. I know he has, and so have we.